I have opened up my IDE PyCharm in here, so let's create a new file to start the application. Python file, and let's name it something like age calculator, and in here let's import what we usually do. So from Tkinter import everything, and typo there, so from, oh that's from, man. And then we're going to import the date and time module to work with the date and time objects. So let's import the date and time, and from that we'll import the same, oh yeah, we are importing date and time. So now let's create the application window that will be TK class, and let's name the title as well, that will be age calculator. Then we're going to create the first label, that is our enter your date of birth. So let's do that. So that is message label, oh label, man, label. Inside our application, the text to display will be enter your DOB, that's date of birth. And then let's use the grid system to place it into our application. So it will go on the first row and the first column as well. And now we're going to move on to the second row, that is the date labels, date, month, year labels, and their respective entry fields. So let's do that, and I'm going to use a naming convention like day label and then E for entry. So let's do that. So the label class application, the text to display will be day, and then let's add a space in here, so it just have a space between this and the day entry widget. So entry inside the app as well. And now in here we're going to define the width of our entry widget. So we don't want it to be just expanding all over the width of our application. We want it to be just 2 characters long, that is we can only have space to enter 2 characters. So the day will be only something like 01 or 31 or 30. So let's leave it to 2, and then we can copy this piece of code for the month and year as well. So do that. Let's rename it here month, and let's add a space in here, so it has a space from this label and this day entry field. So let's name that. So the width will be same for the month. So the month can be something like 1 or 12. So okay, let's month entry and the month length. So this will be year, and this will be year entry. So now let's change this year's text to year, that's capitalized, and let's change its width to 4, because the year can be something like 2000, 1991, etc. So that's why the width of the year will be 4. So we have pretty much created the labels and the entry fields. So now we need to pack them or place them inside of our application using the grid. So let's do that. So all of these, that is day entry field, month entry field, year entry field, will be in the same row, that is the second row, indexed as 1. So we'll start off with day label dot grid, and then it will be in the row 1 and the column 1 as well, that is indexed as 0. So let's copy this piece of code, and then we can copy it, paste it 6 times, and then rename in here. So let's change this to E as well, and then this goes month, this month as well, year entry field. Okay, now let's change the columns. So this column is 1, then it's 2. Oh, that's indexed as 1, third 2, fourth column, fifth column, and the sixth column. So we'll have all of these labels and entry fields in one row, column by column. So now let's view our program so to see what we have so far. So let's call in app dot main loop and let's run our program. So you can see that we have our age calculator application, and you can see we have enter DOB, and then you can see that day and the enter DOB are not in the same column or same length. That's why this column has a space after this entry field. So let's add enter your DOB's column span, say something like 3. So in here, enter DOB, message, label. So while calling its grid, add in column span of, let's say, 3. So run our program now, and yeah, it's now fine. You can see that enter DOB, day, month, year is perfectly placed. So we can enter 2 days, 2 months, and 4 years. So that's fine. And now we need to move on to the next section of our application, that is defining the functions to calculate total days and total seconds lived. So we have got our date of birth. Now let's perform functions to find the total days lived. So let's add spaces, define, first of all, let's say find days. So find days, and in here we need to create 3 variables to store the values of our day, which we will get in the entry field, month entry field, and the year entry field. So let's do that. We'll create date, that will be day, entry field dot get, and after getting that element, as this is a integer, or you can say integer value, so we will pass this whole to the int class, and now let's do the same for the month. So we have month e dot get, and then the whole to the int class, year, int class, year e dot get. So oh, that's small case. And now we need to create a DOB, date of time object. So let's create a DOB variable that will store the date of birth, and we will now call date and time to create a date and time object, where our day will be the date we created above, then our month will be the month, and then the year will be the year as well. So now we have our date of birth object. Now we can move on to defining the time now, that is the moment the function is running. So to find that, we'll use or create a time now object of our date and time object, date and time class. And now we are not going to pass parentheses because we're going to call a inner function, that is now. So this now will pass the time now with the date, time, month, hour, everything we need to find the time now. So now let's find the difference between these time spaces, that is our DOB and the time now. So let's create a time difference, time delta object, that is a difference of between times. So first of all, we need to pass the time now, and then subtract our DOB from that. So now you may think, why did I pass time now first and then DOB? Well, let's say we have the time now as in this year, that is 2021, and then someone's DOB in 1990. So 2021 is the bigger value, it will be on the first, and then from that we're going to subtract DOB, that is 1990. So that's why time now first, and then subtracted from that is our DOB. So now we have the time difference between the person's date of birth and now. So let's print that out through a label, and in this function we are printing the days or finding the days. So let's create a label for days label, and inside of that we have application. The text to display will be something formatted text. So we'll print something like you lived this much days. So let's do that. We'll use string concatenation. So you lived space plus string class, and inside of that we'll pass the days, total days. So we have our time difference dot to access total days. You can see it's just appearing days. So using days, that is time difference dot days, we get the total days difference between our DOB and the time now. So let's concatenate the ending, that is you lived this time space days and exclamation. So now we can use the grid system to place it inside our application. So let's do that. Days dot grid now, and you can see that we have the row, first row as our entry DOB, then we have our labels and entry fields to in the row 1, that is second row index as 1. So now we can move on to defining our find days into the fourth row, that is the row after 2. Well, you may ask why. Well, because that row will be for our buttons, so we are skipping one row and reserving that for our buttons. So let's reserve that for now, and then in here pass, you can see we have row 1, so we are skipping one row, so that will be 3 in here. So the column will be 1 without any doubt, and then let's add a column span also, because we needed to add a column span in here because these elements will be rearranged or the layout will be disturbed. So let's add a column span for our total days label, so it is not disturbed. So we'll add a column span, the span in there, no here, and that will be, let's say 4, because we are printing a label, so it will be big than our this enter your DOB label. That's why we are having a column span of 4. Now moving on ahead, we are going to define another function, that is finding the total seconds. So let's create another function, define find seconds, and then let's copy this, that is finding the days or the time difference, and paste it into our find seconds also. And now you may ask that why do we just copy pasted both of these code inside of our both of functions? We could have just used these functions inside of our file, that is our main.py, main file, main Python file, application file, or whatever it is, and then used inside of these functions individually or separately. But we are doing this because these entry fields are getting elements, and it will be only when the button is clicked. So when the button is clicked, the object or the time will change, that is the time now. It is changing each and every second. That's why for seconds we need the latest time. So each time you click that button, we need the latest time difference between DOB and the time now. That's why we are doing this extra procedure, that is adding or finding these values inside both of our functions. So that's it. Then we can create the label for total seconds. So label, the time difference will be the same, so let's leave that be. So the text to display you lived, string concatenation, and now to get the total time we'll use time difference, and you may think we'll use dot seconds, but that's not the case, because the seconds will just pass a anomaly value. So we are not going to use that. We are going to use total seconds, because it will pass the total seconds from the date of birth and the time now. So use the total seconds function or method of our time difference, and then I'm going to concatenate that using space seconds. exclamation. Now let's use the grid also for this, and now it will be on the row 4th, because you can see row 3rd. After that we have row 4th, and then the column not S, 0th, and then let's add the column span also for this widget, and it will be a bit bigger because the seconds amount is larger than that. So we have 6 widgets in here, that is on the row 1. So let's add a column span of 6 because it's likely to cover all of the space. So we are adding 6 from the get-go. So now we can create our buttons to find the total seconds and days. So let's do that. That will be days button. So button inside our application, the text to display on that will be total, say, days, and then we can the follow up command will be our find days. And now we create another button to find the total seconds. So seconds button inside our application, the text to display will be total seconds. Okay, total seconds, and then the command to follow up will be find seconds. And now let's use grid to place them inside of our applications. So days b dot grid, and as mentioned earlier, we reserved a column for our buttons, so we're going to use that is between our row 1 and 3, that is the second row, or the row index as second, so row 2, and then the column as 0. And now we are going to place the total seconds button beside our days button, so that will be on the same row. So grid row same as our total days, but the column will be one more. Now we have pretty much done all of our coding for our age calculator application. We have created labels, entry fields, functions to define or find the total days and seconds, created the buttons, and we are ready to go. So let's run our program, and you can see we have our age calculator, and oh, we need to add column span for our buttons as well. So let's do that. So in here let's add column span of, let's say, 3, and as we are adding column span of 3, this button will take 3 columns of space. So let's increase this to something like 3 as well, and then also add the column span for this column span, that will be 3 as well. So let's run our program again, and we have nice layout of buttons, widgets, and the entry fields. So let's test our program. So let's pass in elements, let's say 10, month 11, and the year, let's say 2001. Now if we hit total days, okay, we got total days, that is 7006 days, perfect. And then total seconds, that is innumerable, incountable. So you can see that we get a floating point number, that is this dot milliseconds also. So if we hit again, we get that. So it's really interactive, that is every time we press it, it's refreshing, that is the time is passing and every second it's changing. So our application is also changing by each and every second you press the button. So cool, we have a really good age calculator application just within some 60 lines of code. So well, the theme, the only thing we need to set is the theme of our application, that is in the native color. So let's add in the black and white theme in here. So let's add that real quick. So for that, let's create the foreground and background colors. So let's say the background will be black and the foreground will be yellow. So to do that, so let's say create a background variable that will be black string, the foreground will be yellow. So let's configure that for each widget. Perfect. So I have added the background and foreground for each of the widget, this days, this find labels, and these entry fields as well. So now if we run our program, we'll have a new look. So let's hit Alt 1 to expand our view. So Alt 1, and then we have our application. So run our program, and you can see we have our application. So okay, it has a new theme. So let's change this color as we please. So let's change the foreground as something like cyan, that's blue and yellow mixture, and let's also add the app geometry. So let's say something like 250 by 250. So we need a space a bit down also because we're going to print the labels. So we have changed the foreground to cyan from yellow. So let's run our program again, and whoa, we have our application age calculator. And now let's add in the day. Let's say 10, month 10 as well, year something like 2000, and it's just for a purpose of telling to let you know that we can also pass something like 0001, and that's really, I don't think that something from this date of birth is going to use this application, or they are not even present. Well, still nobody is going to use this, but still you can use that is the year when Jesus Christ took birth. So we can find that also, that is, let's say 01, and the month as 01 as well. No, that was 25 December, right? So 12 and 25. So let's calculate that, and you can see it is something like 7,037,446 days. Cool. So let's find the total seconds, and that's really big. So you can see that we can calculate that also. Well, it's just for viewing purpose because nobody with that is going to use up this application. So let's pass in 2000, and the year as, let's let it be 12, and then the day as something like 14, and then hit total days. You can see it's changed, but you can see it has some overlapping. You can see that there has some overlaps. So because we use 001, that is the first year, so it is likely going to happen. So if we click the total seconds again, you can see it's labbed. So let's run our program again, because that was just for viewing purpose. Nobody is going to use something like that as the input. So let's pass in something more relatable. So 10, 2000, total days, okay, total seconds, perfect. So we have created our age calculator using some 63 lines of code with our own theme, and it's just working perfect. And the layout is also not disturbed when we just hit the buttons, so it's fine. And you can see it's just also changing every time we hit total seconds. So your age is really changing every second. That's cool also. And that's it for this lesson. We had a lot of fun creating this age calculator application using Python GUI, running your program, and then use it with your family, friends, and check their total time they lived. So until then, see you soon.